Three participants have asked the meaning of silence. What is silence, they ask me, and what is the quality of silence that would stimulate perceptibility? I do hope that the questions are born of the state of non-knowing. And I hope that they are not born out of the desire to compare what will be communicated from here with what has been already gathered in the basket of the brain. Knowledge prevents listening. If the knowledge has got converted into understanding and has become the substance of one's being, then it helps listening. But every manner of knowledge and the authority about that knowledge benumbs the sensitivity and prevents reception in every manner. So let us presume that we really do not know what silence is, and we are going to find out together the meaning of that word, the substance of the state of consciousness where silence would dwell as an occupant. Have you ever been to the mountains? They do not speak, do they? They live. The mountains live and breathe peace. Peace is the perfume of their being. And they charge you with that peace if you really go to them and be with them in a friendly way. Peace is the content of the being of mountains. And silence is that peace. Have you been to the woods on a bright summer day with a body exhausted by the warmth or the heat of the sun, and you enter the woods, the green, cool, shady woods, and they transmit into your being the peace of their being. Peace is the language of the universe. Silence is that peace of the woods. Silence is the peacefulness of the placid waters running towards the oceans and the seas. Instead of asking what is silence, shouldn't we ask ourselves what is speech? The skies are silent, the earth is silent, the sun shines peacefully, gracefully, in the magnificence of silence. It's the human race that has manipulated the sound energy contained in them and created words. Verbalization is the creation of the human race. It is an intentional, purposeful manipulation of sound energy needed for communication with fellow human beings. So speech is not the natural state of life, but silence is the spontaneous breath of the wholeness of life. Now, in order to learn and find out if we, the children of the human race, conditioned by our immense inheritance of thousands of centuries, can discover that perfume of silence or peace, discover the spontaneous wholeness of our being. So what do we do when we want to learn and discover that peace, that silence? We find out a quiet corner or a room and we sit down quietly, persuade the body and the intelligence contained in the body to be steady. Steadiness is a dynamo of energy. So the body is steady and you move away from the process of verbalization. That typical human activity. Deeply embedded in the human psyche. So when you do not speak, you are moving away from the process of verbalization. This steadying of the body and abstaining from speech are not the essence of silence. Sitting down in a posture, closing the eyes, steadying the body, they are like the skin of a fruit. You take an apple and you peel the skin because you are concerned with the marrow of the apple which you are going to eat. But the marrow of the apple cannot grow without the skin. The skin protects In the same way, this finding out of a quiet room, steadying of the body, abstaining from speech, moving away from noise, all these external symptoms, they are just external aids. They are not the substance, but they are as necessary to learning and finding out what silence is as the skin of a fruit or a vegetable is necessary for the growth and the flowering of the essence of the vegetable or the fruit. All this clarification has become necessary because the questioners have gone into details. What is the relation between a non-speaking and speech? What is the difference between silence and non-silence? And so on and so on. So we have to begin from the very beginning and go into all possible details. So consider for a moment that a learner has satisfied all the prerequisites. And he comes face to face with the inner movement of soundless verbalization going on within him. He comes face to face with the movement of thought structure, the movement of knowledge, the movement of experience, the movement of inheritance within him or her. He cannot compel that movement to stop. He could steady the body, put it into a posture, could abstain from speaking, which were all voluntary movements. But an honest learner discovers in a short while, in a day or two, that the movement of thought structure is not a voluntary movement at all. It has nothing to do with his will, nothing to do with his desire. It has its own independent movement. So the only option left to him is to look at that movement without touching it. It is easily said than done. We have been trained to touch everything with our thought as soon as we come across it. A sound, a word, an object, an individual, a challenge, a difficulty. As soon as we notice these things, we are in a hurry to touch it, to do something about it, with it, to change it, to mold it, to crush it, to accept it, to reject it. And now the learning begins not to establish any relationship, any identification with the inner movement, but just to look at it. This pure cognition or pure perception is the first step towards the dimension of silence. You do not stare at the movement of the thought structure. You do not make an effort to evaluate it. You are not going to judge it. So there is the space of innocence between the exposure of the thought movement and your sensitivity or your perception. Please do see this. It's not the doer who is seeing it. It's not the experiencer wanting to suck out a new experience. Neither a knower who wants to know about it, why the movement is there, how it is there, how to stop it, get free of it. Nothing of that. You are with it because the movement of thought is within you. You are with it because you are it. To notice that the movement of thought structure is within me, it is independent of my volition, it is independent of the movement of the ego, could be the first discovery. This innocent looking may create and does create an illusion of a division between you and that which is exposed to your sensitivity as thought movement. We are now going deeper. While you were looking at it, you felt as if the movement of thought and you are two different entities, because it has nothing to do with your volition. You felt that it is a separate entity. And if the looking is sustained, you realize that you are it, it is you. The I, the me, the ego has no separate existence apart from the stream of wishes, ideas, thoughts, pieces of information that are called knowledge, and so on. So you realize that what you were looking at was your own reflection. The looker and that which was looked at are just one phenomenon. The observer and that which was observed are one and not two. And that is the ending of looking or observation. Observation had a relevance.
The essence of
till you had not realized that the thought structure was your own content. It was the substance of what you call your own mind, yourself, your ego.
the essence of
So
spirituality.
every inner movement is the movement of the inheritance, the past. Every inner movement is conditioned by the past. And there is no freedom in the dimension of that movement. Thought structure knows no freedom. Whether the thought is from the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Dhammapada, the Quran, the Bible, an idea a thought, an abstraction of what was perceived by the ancient people, has no dynamism. You realize, and therefore, inquiring with the help of words, inquiring through the cerebral movement terminates. A participant has asked, what is the relationship between silence and inquiry? Can they coexist? So we are turning to the second question. Inquiry as a cerebral movement, inquiry through the movement of knowledge, through the books or speeches of so-called enlightened persons, liberated persons, and whatever. That inquiry terminates as soon as one realizes that a word is an abstraction. Information about reality is not an encounter with reality. So the process of gathering information, acquiring new information, new diction, new versions, comes to an end. Silence is the termination of inquiry as a cerebral movement. As long as one feels that words can help, one travels around the world, moving from one religion to another, from one teacher to another. Gathering new ideas, ideologies, patterns of thinking, codes of conduct, conforming to various disciplines, and so on. But the moment you realize that the word is never the thing, an abstraction cannot provide what a direct perception can. A concept cannot replace the majesty of an intimate perception. Cerebral movement becomes irrelevant to learning. It had a relevance when you began the inquiry. And there comes a period when that movement loses its relevance. That which was helpful becomes an obstacle. Termination of the process of verbalization, termination of the cerebral movement is a very significant point in the life of a person. The learner who had become an inquirer transcends again into the state of learning, but now the learning would be without words. Now the learning would not be tethered to the past of the total human race. So free of the past, free of the words, free of the cerebral movement, you find yourself in solitude, psychic solitude that is silence. The thought structure does not move, and therefore the concept of time is no more there, and you are left with the emptiness of the eternal present. Silence brings you to the timeless present. The inner division is no more there as me and the not me, the I and the world, the me and the cosmos. The division, the clashes, the tensions are gone. So there is the relaxation, as if you are back into your wholeness, like those mountains who live in the wholeness of their being, and therefore there is peace. Your consciousness becomes like the immense skies and their emptiness. So the suspension or termination of the thought movement allows the emptiness to manifest itself, allows the nothingness to manifest itself. So silence is getting back to the source of being, where you are no body and no thing. You are just being or beingness. Does the thought structure remain dissolved permanently? Asks a participant. What is permanency, sir? And what is dissolution of a thought structure? Is it a structure made of bricks or stones? Something solid, visible, tangible, which yields to dissolution? Has thought any factual existence? Or has it only a conceptual existence? It exists in the word. And the words are manipulation of sounds. You have attributed certain meanings to certain combinations of letters. The meaning has been attributed to these combinations of letters and organizing of sounds by the human race. And that may be as necessary for human society as the structures, the buildings in which you live. The structures of brick and stone and mortar provide you with an enclosure and keep the body protected. Maybe what you call thought structure, containing the total knowledge and experience of the human race, is an invisible, intangible, conceptual structure creating an enclosure in which you believe you are safe. Thought is a security measure, isn't it? So when we use the term thought structure, please let us be aware that it has no solidity, it has no factual content. The sun, the moon have factual content. They exist as physical facts, in quotes. But when you talk about time, which is a measurement, and you measure it by your watch or clock, it has no factual content at all. Time is in the brain. It's a measurement useful for the brain and the collective activities in human society, but it has no reality. The concepts, the symbols, you may call them a structure because you want to describe the inner movement. You have to use some word, so you call it a thought structure. You may call it a time structure, seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years, centuries. But nothing exists like a century. There is nothing like an year or an hour or a month. It's all measurement. So it has only a conceptual existence, but not a perceptual, factual content. Please do see this. Then how are you going to dissolve time? Can you say that you have dissolved time structure? That which does not exist cannot be dissolved, obviously. So thought or the word has no reality outside the human brain. It's a figurative way of saying that the thought structure is dissolved. Please let us be very clear about each word that we use. We can look at the concepts and symbols and measurements that we have created. We can look at what we call our knowledge and description of the events that have taken place in life, calling them experiences. We can look at that as we look at ourselves in a mirror, at our reflection. With the help of memory, recollection, contemplation, reflection, you can look at it. But you are looking at something invisible, intangible, non-factual. So you look at the mechanism of thought, the movement of thought. And where is that movement of thought? It is within you. It is in your neurological system. It is in your chemical system. It's a neurochemical movement within you. Because the sound energy, manipulated as words, has affected the biological structure. Inheritance is nothing but the knowledge being imprinted in the neurological and the chemical system, the bone structure, the composition of the blood, plasma, the muscles, the nerves, the chemicals. They contain the total human past. You and I. We are the human past, condensed, imprinted in our being, embedded in our being. So, you look at it, you observe it, you understand what it is, you understand its limitations, and therefore, the sense of authority about the thought, about the past, disappears. It is the authority about the thought that disappears. It is the sense of identification with the past knowledge, that disappears. And the disappearance of the sense of authority and identification is figuratively called as the dissolution of thought. Nothing was created and nothing is dissolved. The conditionings are still there because the body is there. And in the biological structure, the conditionings are there, but they have lost relevance to your perception, your responses, your relationships, because you have understood how mechanical they are, how repetitive they are, and how they prevent your first-hand personal relationship with the present. We talk about dissolution of ignorance through understanding. Had ignorance any existence? Had it any structure? But you may use the term, when I understood the reality, the ignorance disappeared or got dissolved. You may use those terms for communication. That which is does not get dissolved. The form gets changed. The composition changes. The utility after the change in the form, the ingredients, the components changes. There is neither creation nor destruction. There is emergence and merging back. There is individuation and going back to non-individuation. There is the activity of formulating concepts and ideas, coining words, using them, understanding their limitations, and getting out of their clutches. Knowledge relieves you of ignorance, and understanding relieves you of knowledge. Words that brought the knowledge. So, my friends, thought structure is not dissolved, but we understand and appreciate its limitations. If the thought structure, the memory, the experience, the inheritance is completely wiped out, will you be able to live in the society? You have to work as a housewife, as a teacher, as a doctor, as a lawyer, as a businessman, or somewhere in the government, at the United Nations and what have you. You have to function, you have to use brain. After all, thought or knowledge is a cerebral movement. It's a neurochemical movement. So if the thought structure is completely dissolved, then there will be no memory, and you will not be able to function at all. The word, the knowledge in relation to the material surroundings has a relevance. So you use it there in order to regulate that tape recorder, regulating the microphone according to the volume and the pitch with which the speaker speaks. So the factual information, which also takes the form of a thought, has a relevance. And there you use it competently, whenever it is needed. Without the movement of the thought structure, there won't be any fine arts, music, dance, drama, literature, poetry, transportation, communication, cooking your meals, They all require the psychophysical activity. So you know where the factual memory is necessary and the knowledge is necessary. And you know where it is irrelevant. It has no relevance whatsoever when you would like to learn and discover for yourself what is the essence of reality, what is death. When you want to discover what is divinity, what is sacredness, discover what is peace, innocency, beauty. You may read hundreds of books on beauty. That doesn't help. You may read dozens of books on love. It doesn't help. So, when it comes to learning and discovering the meaning of life, the nature of reality, the content of divinity, the past has to be left behind. The movement of thought has no relevance whatsoever. And therefore you say, I do not know what is divinity. I do not know what is reality. Let me find out. There are descriptions coming to me from the past, but the description is never that which is described. The word is not the thing. So let me put the words aside. Otherwise, the words will condition and inhibit my perception. I will see what the past has told me. That will be second-hand, third-hand perception. So the vast, immense knowledge and inheritance has no relevance whatsoever when I am concerned with finding out the meaning of reality. The consciousness has to be emptied of all that, and one has to be in that emptiness. One has to be that emptiness for the discovery to take place. But we have used the crutches of knowledge and experience of our ancestors for thousands of years. We feel that if we throw away those crutches, we'll not be able to walk. We are afraid to be alone with life, to be alone with reality. So do what you will. We carry on with the inner subtle verbalization. I do hope that you are looking with me at the question if thought structure can be dissolved permanently. If we have seen that thought structure has conceptual reality and not factual substance, if we have seen the field of relevance and the field where thought movement is not relevant, and if we have seen that it is understanding of the relevance and the irrelevance that sets you free of the authority, the shackles of authority, if we have seen all that, then let us turn to the term permanently. What is permanency? Do you call that permanent which is static? And is not the word permanent or impermanent related to the concept of time? Please do see this. If time is only a measurement created by the human brain for the purpose of using it at certain levels while living in society, if it is only a measurement, then what will happen to the term permanency or impermanency? Permanency, continuity, sequence, all these terms are related to the concept of time. It's a psychological process. First, you create it as a measurement, and then you believe it to be a fact, and then you want to base theories upon it. You know, that which is eternal has no permanency at all. It has a dynamism. Eternity is born every moment and dies every moment. That which has the capacity to be born and to die is eternal. So it emerges into a form and merges back into a non-form. That is eternity, billions of years. And on this planet, life has been manifesting itself into innumerable forms. Each form having its own unique beauty and relevance to the wholeness of life. So eternity is a flux of change. It's not that static permanence. It has no continuity. You feel that there is a continuity in your breathing in and breathing out. But every inhalation that you take in is a new one. And with the exhalation, you are throwing out what you had inhaled a moment ago. So with the realization, with the understanding of the mechanism of thought, its limitations, its fields of relevance and irrelevance, the authority is gone. The authority of the idea of me, the ego, the self, is gone. So you you discover the wholeness of your being. And you remain in that wholeness, you live in that wholeness as a tree lives in its wholeness. A mountain lives in its wholeness. A tree has a trunk, the branches, the leaves, the flowers, the fruits. It's the wholeness of the tree that travels through the trunk, going to the branches, the twigs, the leaves, the flowers, and the fruit. The fruit, the juices, the fragrance, the taste, the flavor of the fruit is really the manifestation of the wholeness of the tree. The tree is its wholeness. Please do see. It lives in its wholeness. Its every movement, even an expression in a tiny leaf, and that shiny greenness of that leaf, and that tenderness, is an expression of the whole tree. In the same way, you remain in the wholeness of your being, and every gesture of yours, every word of yours, every glance of yours, every movement of yours becomes an expression of that wholeness. So liberated from the clutches of identification with the past, you are in the majestic freedom of your wholeness. And silence is the perfume of that wholeness. It's not only sealing your lips, non-speaking, abstaining from speech, sitting down in a posture, closing your eyes. Silence is a way of living, my friends. It's an alternative way of living, where there is no addiction to verbalization, no denial of verbalization, no acceptance of the authority of concepts and symbols, and no running away from the conceptual world or the world of thought and knowledge. It is seeing life as it is, and it is being with life. So silence is the perfume of the wholeness of your being. No movement within you divides you then, as thoughts divide you, and emotions fragment you now, and ambitions isolate you. All that juvenile fragmentation comes to an end. But the clock says the time is over. We shall meet